Hi, I'm Rohit from Team Agnihana, and we are representing India at the World Cosplay Summit 2022. I am cosplaying as the Runan Gigante armor from the game Monster Hunter World. It took me about 6 months to finish this costume and is by far my longest project to date. Even though this costume is quite bulky, my main focus was on the finer, intricate details and all the detailing on the paintwork. One of the biggest challenges I faced in this costume is that even though it's so big, I had to make it extremely light and mobile to be able to use it for the World Cosplay Summit entry video, because we need a lot of fighting scenes and running around. Despite looking very bulky, this costume is actually extremely lightweight and it's very easy to move around in it. Most of the costume is made up of very lightweight EVA foam. Other than that, I have also used materials like PU leather and PLA plastic. I have primed the armor with flexible flex bond and used acrylic paints to paint everything, and then I used a mix of gloss and matte finishes to give a good contrast to the costume. The base of all the parts in the Ruin Gigante armor are made out of EVA foam ranging from 6 to 12 mm. These were made using Pepakura patterns that we 3D modeled in Blender and then unfolded into papers and traced them onto the foam. And then all this dragon skin pattern is made using soldering iron. All the soldering iron patterns are actually all of different size depending on which part of the costume it is, to stay accurate to the design in the game. As you can see in the center, there's even a symmetry on left and the right. There are in total about 1500 to 1800 spikes on this costume. All the bigger spikes are made out of EVA foam. I believe there are about 600 of those throughout the costume. All the tiny small spikes that you see on the shoulders and all the other parts of the costume are 3D modeled and 3D printed in plastic so that they don't break, as foam spikes are quite fragile. And all the big spikes are made out of foam so that they're very flexible and light to wear. Before painting the armor, I primed them using a very flexible primer so that the entire costume is actually extremely flexible, because for World Cosplay Summit performance, we need to bend a lot and be able to do a lot of movements for the fight and running scenes. For the painting process on the base armor, there are actually 5 shades of different grays that I have applied using hand brush and dry brushing to create all sorts of different highlights and shadows. The orange details are again painted using acrylic paints in 3 different shades of yellow and orange. These spikes were painted using acrylic colors ranging all the way from black to white, using a lot of dry brushing and hand brushes. And then on top of that, I have used some shades of pink, brown, red and teal to give it a very nice holographic look. And then to finish off the paint job, I have left the base skin part of the armor as matte, while all the horns are very glossy. I did that using some gloss coating on top of it, just so that there's a lot of contrast in the costume around the texture, so that horns stand out a lot as glossy, while the armor looks very cool in the matte finish. There are a lot of metallic and leather parts in the costume. So the black metallic parts are actually made out of EVA foam and leather that is painted in very dark silver paint. These are again primed using very flexible primers so that I can move my elbows very freely without damaging the paint and the costume. About 10% of this costume is actually 3D printed parts in PLA plastic. All of these parts were 3D modeled by me in ZBrush and Blender and all sorts of other 3D modeling softwares. The costume has a lot of leather capes and flaps in the front and the back. These are made out of fake leather, fake black leather, and the back side of it we have painted using acrylic colors in orange. And on the front of all these capes, there are a lot of very elaborate orange designs that were hand painted using a paintbrush. Underneath all of my armor, I am wearing very light chainmail that is 3D printed in PLA plastic. It is very comfortable to wear as it moves a lot and is also very light. The bow for my Nergigante armor is actually entirely made out of EVA foam except for the handle, which is 3D printed. I modeled the whole thing in Blender and then Pepakura unwrapped it and then used those patterns to make this bow. All the details on the bow are done using soldering iron and then dremeled down sanded with a Dremel to get all the designs.
Hi, my name is Vana from Team Agnihana representing India. I'm wearing the Kirin Armor from the game Monster Hunter World. I chose this armor because it is really cute and fun to wear. It also allows me freedom of mobility. Even though it is a very light armor, it has a lot of details that required a wide range of crafting skills to make. For the wig, I started off with a basic white wig. It was cut down to size and later sectioned into spikes. I used pieces of foam to help the spikes hold shape and volume. I made my own wefts with extra hair that was cut off to add more volume to the whole wig. The front bangs were a completely different piece that was made with extra wefts and stitched to the main wig and then shaped.
So all the armor parts of the costumes are made up of a layer of 3 mm EVA foam and very thin white fur mounted on it. We airbrushed it slightly blue, and then we added some grey paint details manually with brush. The gauntlets and the legs were made in the same fashion, along with all other pieces with similar skin and fur. All the leather braids were handmade using thin strips of brown leather. All the leather belt parts of the costumes are actually a base of 3 and 2 mm EVA foam. We cut the EVA foam and glued them together to make these ridges, and then we applied a layer of brown or orange fake leather. The brown leather that we got was quite flat looking, so we used 2 shades of dark brown paint and weathered the belts to make them look a bit weathered out. And then we used some silver paint to add these silver details manually using a paintbrush. All the metallic accessories in the costumes are actually 3D modeled in Blender and 3D printed in PLA plastic and then hand painted. The innerwear of the costume is sweater fabric that we hand stitched using needles, and the blue parts are hand painted with acrylic paints. A lot of leather accessories in this costume are actually a blend of foam and leather, and they're hand stitched using cotton thread. The horn is 3D modeled and 3D printed and then hand painted. The slingers on both costumes were 3D modeled in Blender and 3ds Max and then 3D printed. The dual blades for the Kirin costume are mostly 3D printed. We sculpted these 3D models in ZBrush and then printed them out. The grip has a leather finish. These gloves and all the other black leather part of the costume are made using very stretchy leather fabric, and they're all hand stitched using needle and thread.